Arizona Territory, 1879. The heat had already settled by sunrise, casting long shadows across the rocks and thorned brush near the Salt River. Zacharias Vaughn rode alone, reins slack in one hand, the other resting near his worn colt. His face was carved from silence, jaw tight and eyes narrowed, a man who had long since stopped wasting words. Folks in the nearby town of Gila Bend said he never spoke unless it was life or death. And even then, barely. Zacharias had not planned to stop that morning. He was heading north, away from the past, away from the grave markers on the land he used to call home. But something in the dry wind shifted. A sound, soft, wrong. He pulled his gelding to a halt, listened. There it was again, thin breathing, labored. He climbed down without a word, moving toward the brush. Behind a stack of sun-bleached rocks, half covered in dust, lay a woman. Her dress was torn, covered in blood and dirt. Her lips were cracked, skin burned from the sun, hair tangled like a nest. She looked no older than 20, maybe 21. Her arms curled around two small bundles. Children, Zacharias knelt. The woman blinked once, slow, her lips trying to form a word, her eyes locked onto his, wild, afraid, and then, hope. He lifted the little girl first, no older than 3, then the boy, maybe 5. Both were burning with fever. The woman tried to sit up, but her body gave out. "Do not speak," Zacharias said, his voice rough, unused. He lifted her gently, one arm under her knees, the other behind her back. She weighed close to nothing. He rode hard with all 3 held to him, not stopping until he reached his cabin built into the red rock hills beyond the town. He had not brought anyone there in years. He had built it to be alone, but now, he was not alone. The woman woke 2 days later. Her fever had broken, thanks to his careful tending the cool cloths he kept pressing to her head, the broth he fed her drop by drop. The children, both pale and weak, had started to sit up and eat. He found the boy trying to stack firewood with shaking hands. The woman sat up when Zacharias entered with a tin bowl. "You saved us," she rasped. He nodded once, setting the bowl beside her cot. She looked down at herself. He had wrapped her in one of his old shirts, clean now, though still patched. "I had no right to come into your life like this." "I did not ask you to," he said. She blinked, then looked away, ashamed. "What is your name?" he asked, quieter now. Evelyn Ashford, the children Perry and Phoebe." "They are mine." She reached for them as they slept, curled next to each other beneath a blanket on the floor. Zacharias leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You came out of the West Trail. What happened?" Evelyn's hands trembled in her lap. "My husband died last winter. Fever took him. The ranch we lived on, his brother tried to keep it, but he forced us out. Said the land was not mine. I was trying to get to Prescott. I thought maybe I could find work there. We were walking. Everything was stolen by a man while I was asleep. Food, water. He left us in the desert." Silence stretched between them. Zacharias's jaw worked. "That man will not live long if I find him." Evelyn looked up, startled. "I do not say things I do not mean," he added. "I believe you," she whispered. The next few days passed slowly. Evelyn recovered her strength, helped by the quiet steadiness in Zacharias. He never asked for thanks, never asked for anything, but he was always there. He showed Perry how to chop kindling. He taught Phoebe how to feed the chickens out back. He repaired Evelyn's boots with care, even though she had not asked. One evening, she found him outside under the stars, sharpening his knife by lantern light. She stood watching him for a moment. "You do not speak much," she said. He looked up. "Words are not always needed." Evelyn stepped closer, folding her arms against the breeze. "You are good with the children. They remind me of someone." She waited. He said nothing more. "You lost someone," she said. "I can see it in you." Zacharias set the knife down. "A wife, long ago. Fever took her and our son." Evelyn sat beside him on the bench. "I am sorry," he nodded. "You do not need to say it." They sat in silence, but something between them shifted. It was not pity, it was knowing, shared pain, quiet and deep. That night, as the wind moved through the canyon and the children slept soundly for the first time in weeks, Evelyn stood at the doorway of the cabin. Zacharias had not gone far. He sat near the fire pit outside, keeping watch like always. She walked toward him. He looked up. "I was nothing but a stranger in the dirt," she said. "You could have left me there." "I could have," he said, "but you did not." "No, why?" He stared at the fire for a long time, then quietly, "Because something in me. Knew I should not. Evelyn knelt beside him, her fingers brushing his hand. He did not pull away. I was not looking for anyone, she said. Neither was I. Their eyes met. And for the first time since he had carried her from the desert, Zacharias Vaughn let the silence break. I do not speak of love, he said slowly. Never have, not in many years. Evelyn's breath caught, but when I saw you there, dust and blood and broken eye, I felt something break open in me. She leaned forward, her forehead resting against his. You do not have to speak it, she whispered. I already know, but he did speak it, soft like the wind. You gave me a reason to speak at all, and when she kissed him, it was not desperate or rushed. It was steady, real. The beginning of something neither of them had planned, but both of them needed more than they had ever known. And Zacharias, the cowboy who never spoke of love, held her close under the stars. Evelyn poured water into the tin basin, careful not to wake the children still tangled in quilts behind her. The morning sun hadn't yet cleared the ridge, but the hush before daylight always called her forward. Her hands moved without rush, washing her face, tying back her hair with a strip of calico she'd salvaged from her torn skirt. Clean water, a place to stand. It still didn't feel real. Behind her, the cabin creaked softly as Zacharias stepped inside with an armful of dry pine. She looked up. His shirt was damp with sweat down the back, collar open, boots dusted from the trail up to the ridge. You've been out early, she said. There's a spring not far from here. I've got a catchment running now, should hold through the dry months. Evelyn dried her hands on her skirt. You built this place with more care than some folks give a church. Zacharias set the wood by the stove, then straightened. I built it to hold. She watched him stir the embers back to life. The way he moved measured, precise, spoke of a man who never expected someone to share his space. I could scrub the floorboards today, she offered. And the windows, if you've got vinegar. He didn't look up. There's a jug in the back cupboard. And after that, I'd like to stitch something for the children. Phoebe's hem is barely holding. Just need a little thread, maybe a needle that isn't bent sideways. There's a tin of sewing things in the chest near the stove. My wife kept it. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded once. Thank you. Zacharias tossed another split log into the fire. They're your children. They should look tended to. Her hands stilled against her skirt. They haven't in a long time. He didn't answer, just slid the kettle onto the flame and leaned against the table, arms crossed, gaze steady. You're not the sort to ask questions, she said. But I reckon you have one. I do, she waited. You said Prescott, that's still where you aim to go, she glanced at the children. Perry's lashes fluttered against his cheek. Phoebe stirred, hugging her doll closer, the one she'd found wedged in a saddlebag Zacharias had offered her without a word. Evelyn turned back to face him. I thought I did, before. And now, I don't know what I thought I'd find there. A room, maybe, a job washing linens. But the world's harder than I gave it credit for, Zacharias nodded once. It is. I could do what needs doing here if you'd have us. I can cook, clean, so I won't sit idle. I don't need a housekeeper. I wasn't offering to be one. He looked at her, long and quiet. The kettle began to hiss, and still he didn't move. I'm not expecting you to say something pretty, she said. You don't strike me as the type. I am not. But you brought us here, and you haven't sent us away. Zacharias stepped forward and poured water into 2 tin cups. He passed one to her without touching her hand. I haven't, he said. She took the cup, sipped. I owe you more than I can name. I didn't help you to be owed. Evelyn leaned against the doorframe, the heat of the tin warming her palms. What did you used to do? Before this place, he sat at the table, one hand wrapped around his own cup. Drove cattle from Texas north through New Mexico, rode with a trail crew for 7 years. Wasn't much pay, but it kept me far from towns. Why far? Too many voices, too much drink. I didn't trust myself with either. She turned that over. You were running. I was staying gone. Evelyn lowered her gaze, and now, I built this place to be alone, but I'm not anymore. She looked up. I don't know what it means yet, he said. But I don't regret it. The space between them felt steady, even with all the things unsaid. Later, while the children chased each other barefoot through the dusty yard, Evelyn scrubbed the windows with vinegar and cloth torn from her old petticoat. She didn't ask Zacharias to help. He had gone to mend the fence line with a hammer slung from his belt, but she caught him watching her once through the corner of the glass. When his eyes met hers, he didn't look away. That night, she sat by the fire with her mending in her lap. The cabin glowed in the lamplight, soft and golden. Zacharias was near the door, oiling the hinges of his saddle stirrup, his movements quiet. Perry asked if we're staying. Zacharias didn't move. I told him I didn't know for sure. But I'd like to. He set the stirrup down and looked at her, not with surprise, but with something settled. I've got room here, enough for 4. I want to earn my place. You already have. She folded the fabric on her lap, hands still. I don't know what this is between us, she said. But I'm not afraid of it. Zacharias stood, crossed the room. Neither am I. He reached out, brushed a stray hair from her cheek. She didn't flinch. I don't have the words for what I feel, he said, but I feel it just the same. You don't need words, she whispered. You've already shown me. When he kissed her, it was slow and certain, not a question, a promise. Outside, the wind shifted in the canyon. Inside, the fire burned low, steady as the rhythm of 2 hearts no longer meant to beat alone. By late June, the sun no longer stepped lightly. It poured down heavy and hard, bleeding heat into the soil until even the mesquite trees curled their leaves inward. Evelyn kept to the shade where she could, pressing cool cloths to the children's necks and shoulders, coaxing them into stillness during the worst of the light. The cabin's thick stone walls, chinked with clay and care, held the heat at bay through the afternoon. Still, it was work to keep everyone comfortable. Zacharias had taken to rising before first light, out the door with a coil of rope, and his hat low before Evelyn stirred the stove. That morning, she caught him tying a bundle onto the saddle horn, a wrapped cloth and something that gave the shape of a rifle beneath it. "Rattlers near the chicken run again," he said. She stepped outside barefoot, pushing hair off her brow. "They getting too close," found tracks under the ladder, small ones but bold. "I can go with you." His brow lifted just slightly. "I'm not helpless," she said. "I never said you were." "Then let me come." He watched her a moment longer, then gave a slow nod. "Perry'll keep Phoebe close. He always does." She tied on her boots, and they rode out together, the horses crunching dry brush beneath them as they curved around the base of the ridge. The land stretched wide and baked, but not empty hawks circled, lizards darted, and dust devils danced in the distance. They didn't speak. She didn't need him to. The rhythm of the hooves, the creak of leather, and the quiet strength beside her said enough. They found the burrow near the edge of the coop, just under a slab of stone. Zacharias dismounted first, pulling the rifle free and checking the chamber. Evelyn crouched a few paces back, watching the hole, 2 snakes, sun-dark and restless, coiled inside the shadow. He fired once, then again. The stillness that followed was sudden and deep. She exhaled slowly. "You don't hesitate. Not when it matters." They worked together, clearing the burrow, laying stones to block further trespass. When they finished, they sat beneath the cottonwood by the creek, the only patch of shade for a mile. Her hands were scratched, his shirt dark with sweat. "You ever think about leaving this place?" she asked, pulling her knees up, arms wrapped around them. "I already did," he said. "More than once. But you came back. I didn't build it for passing through." He looked out across the land. "I needed something that didn't move." She picked a dried stem from the ground and twisted it between her fingers. "You ever think about what else it could hold?" "I mean, besides a man trying to outrun ghosts." He glanced at her then, not startled, but searching. "You've been quiet since that night," she said. "I've never had a reason to be loud. I'm not asking for noise, just truth." He leaned back, arms over his knees. "I didn't expect to look at someone and feel the ground change, but I did." Evelyn's throat tightened. "You're not the only one startled by it. I know I'm not easy. I don't want easy, I want honest." Zacharias reached into the side pouch of his saddlebag, pulled out a folded length of linen. He passed it to her. Inside was a pair of children's shoes, soft leather, stitched with care. "They'll need better if they are to walk this land." She traced the tiny seams with her thumb. "You made these?" He gave a small nod. "Used to mend tack along the trail." Stitched plenty of things that had to hold. She folded the linen back with care. "These will hold." They mounted again and rode back slow, the horses picking their way through the dust. When they reached the cabin, Perry was on the porch, shading his eyes against the sun. Phoebe slept curled beside the dog, her thumb tucked against her cheek. That night, Evelyn stood at the edge of the garden plot with a spade in hand, turning the soil. Zacharias joined her, a wooden box beneath his arm. Seeds, he said. She looked up. You saved some? Carrots, beans, squash. They'll need tending. She took the box. Then we'll tend them. He didn't speak again, just stepped beside her, hands in the dirt, and helped press the seeds into the warm earth. When they finished, she brushed her palms on her skirt and watched him a long while. Zacharias, he turned. I'm not passing through either. He stepped closer, the dusk spread gold between them. I know, he said. She reached for his hand, let their fingers knot together. No ceremony. No declaration, but a promise, quiet and steady, planted deep in the soil, one that would grow with care. A storm had rolled in the night before, not with thunder, but with wind sharp enough to pull shingles loose and scatter ashes from the hearth. By morning, the sky was pale and washed clean, the air cooled, the scent of damp mesquite hanging low. Evelyn stood at the edge of the fence Zacharias had built last autumn, watching Perry push Phoebe on the swing he'd rigged from a length of rope and a sanded plank. The girl's laughter came easy now, untroubled, and Evelyn felt a quiet ache of gratitude in her chest, deep and still, like something planted long ago finally breaking through the dirt. Behind her, the door creaked open. She's lighter, Zacharias said. Doesn't cough when she sleeps anymore. Evelyn nodded. You've seen it too. He stood beside her, arms loose at his sides. They're settling, both of them. It's in how they move. She glanced his way. And us. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up a fallen branch and broke it clean in half with one twist of his hands. I've been thinking on building a second room, he said. Off the east wall. Would stay warmer come winter. She watched the children another moment before turning to face him fully. You sure you want us that permanent? I wouldn't be drawing up plans if I wasn't. Her fingers brushed the hem of her apron, damp from hanging laundry. You've done everything for us except say what you want. He looked at her then, not guarded, not careful, just honest. I want you to stay. All of you. I want mornings like this, years from now. Her breath caught, not from surprise, but from the weight of hearing it spoken aloud. I wasn't sure, she said softly. I thought maybe you were just making room because it was decent. I don't do anything just to be decent, Evelyn. She stepped closer, slow. You want a family again, I want you. She studied his face, the wind catching the edge of his collar, lifting it just enough to show the scar across his collarbone. She'd never asked how he got it. She never would. Some things didn't ask for explanation. I didn't think I'd be wanted again, she said. You're not just wanted, you're needed. He reached for her hand. She let him. That evening they sat beneath the cottonwood by the creek. The storm had knocked a few branches down, and Zacharias had gathered them into a stack for burning. The children were inside, Phoebe curled up on the braided rug, Perry tracing letters in a ledger he'd taken a liking to. Evelyn leaned her head against Zacharias's shoulder. What do you remember most about your boy? He didn't hesitate. His hands. He had this way of reaching up when he wanted to be lifted. Never made a sound, just reached. She let that sit between them a while. You think he'd have liked this place? Zacharias nodded once. He would have chased the jackrabbits till he wore the soles off his shoes. She smiled. Phoebe does that now, ran clear to the draw last week before Perry hollered her back. He studied the fire. You want more? She looked over at him. Children? He nodded. Maybe, if it comes, I won't fear it. He ran a thumb along the back of her hand. I'd see to you, all of you. Every breath I've got left, I know you would. Later, when the stars came out sharp above the ridge, they stood in the doorway of the cabin. The children slept behind them, the dog curled near the hearth. I've never had a wedding dress, Evelyn said. You want one? No, she said. I want the vows, the doing of them. I don't need the dress. Zacharias stepped behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. Then we'll do it right, quiet, just us and the land. She leaned back into him, the steady rhythm of his breath against her shoulder. I never thought I'd be loved in a place like this, she whispered. You weren't just loved, he said. You were found. And with the night around them soft and vast, she believed him. Every word. By late August, the nights had softened. The sting of summer had eased, and the days stretched with the promise of harvest. The bean plants clung to their stakes, green pods heavy and nearly ready for picking. Evelyn had sown the squash late, but the vines took to the soil as if they'd always belonged there. She stood barefoot in the tilled rows at dusk, apron folded over one arm, her other hand resting on the swell of her stomach. The child had come to her quiet, without struggle or sickness, and Zacharias had noticed before she said a word. He hadn't spoken much when she told him not in the moment but the next morning she'd found a stack of cedar planks near the cabin, just the right size for a cradle. "Where do you want it?" he asked now, wiping his hands on a rag as he stepped down from the porch. "Near the east window," she said. "Where the sun breaks first," he nodded, and that was all. He'd already measured the frame by sight, already selected pieces without knots. She could tell by the way his fingers moved over the grain. He worked with the steadiness of someone who saw time differently now, not as something to outrun, but something to build into. Behind them, Perry and Phoebe were kneeling by the coop, a shallow dish of cornmeal between them. The hens had grown used to the children, and one of the red feathered ones followed Phoebe like a shadow. "Perry wants to know if he can learn to write letters all the way through," Evelyn said, brushing dirt from her wrist. "He's been copying names off the flour sack. I've got half a slate left in the chest," Zacharias said. "He can use it until we get another." She looked toward the cabin. "I thought I might teach again, not in a schoolhouse, just here. If other folks have young ones." He didn't answer right away, only stepped beside her and looked out over the land. The cottonwood swayed in the breeze and the ridge behind it caught the last of the light. "You think they'd come?" he asked. "If they knew there was someone waiting with patience and a pencil, maybe." He gave a quiet sound of approval, then reached for her hand. "You're different now," she said, his brow furrowed. "How? You look forward." Zacharias glanced toward the ridge, then back at her. "It's because I have something worth looking toward." That night they ate by lamplight. Evelyn had roasted beans and salt pork in the cast iron skillet, and Phoebe had helped press biscuits flat with her palm. The dog sat beside Perry's chair, chin resting on one paw. After supper, Zacharias brought the cradle frame inside, setting it against the far wall. He didn't say anything about it, and neither did she, but when she ran her hand along the smooth curve of the rail, her throat tightened. Later, when the children were asleep, Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, brushing out her hair with long, thoughtful strokes. Zacharias stood at the window, arms crossed, his shirt sleeves rolled back. "I keep thinking," he said, "about the way you looked that morning I found you. How I couldn't see anything past the dirt and the sunburn, but you looked at me like I was someone who could be trusted." She set the brush down. "You were," he turned to her. "I didn't believe it then. But I do now." She reached for him, and he came to her quietly, kneeling before her with his hands on either side of her thighs. "I want to give you more than tools and fences," he said. "More than a place to sleep. You already have. I want to marry you." Her breath caught, but she didn't look away. "You asking me proper?" He nodded. "I am." She leaned down, cupping his face in both hands. "Then yes. With everything in me." They married 3 weeks later, just before the equinox. No preacher, no paper, just their hands joined beneath the cottonwood, and Perry holding Phoebe by the hand as witness. Zacharias carved a ring from a strip of silver he'd kept tucked away, and Evelyn wore it like it had always been hers. By the time the baby came, the land had turned gold. The leaves along the ridge had begun to fall, and the garden had given its last. Evelyn labored long, but not alone. Zacharias never left the room, not once, and when the child let out her first cry, he wept without shame. They named her Clara, after Evelyn's grandmother, and she was born full of life, with hands already grasping for the world. The cradle sat near the east window, just as Evelyn had wanted, and in the mornings, the baby watched the light spread across the floor while her mother hummed and her father carved wood into smooth, useful shapes. The children learned their letters. Other families came. And soon, once a week, Evelyn gathered 5 young ones around the garden bench and taught them by drawing in the dirt and reading from the only Bible they had, the one with Zacharias' wife's name still written in the front, and now Evelyn's beside it. The cabin grew with them. A room added, then a lean-to, then a small loft Perry claimed as his own. The land held them, and they held each other. They did not speak often of the past. It had shaped them, yes, but it no longer ruled them. The pain had softened, like the wind that curved through the canyon, still present, but no longer sharp in the evenings when the sun slipped behind the ridge and the chickens had settled. Evelyn and Zacharias sat on the porch with Clara between them and the other children nearby. No words were needed then. Just the slow creak of the rocking chair, the feel of her shoulder against his, and the quiet marvel that they were here, together, after all, and they were never alone again.